A struggling, single dad handed his baby to a stranger. Just for a minute. But what she whispered afterward changed everything. This story isn't just about survival. It's about how a single act of kindness can become the miracle you never expected. Single dad handed a stranger his baby to help an injured man. She whispered, "Can I be her mom?" The winter wind whipped down 4th Street, slicing through the cracks in Logan McRae's threadbare coat like a blade. His boots, cheap ones bought second-hand, squeaked across the salted pavement as he balanced a heat-insulated pizza bag on one arm and his 3-year-old daughter Hazel in the other. She was asleep against his shoulder cheeks, flushed pink from the cold thumb still curled by her mouth. Her coat was 2 sizes too big. Logan's hat, tugged over her tiny head, slid down to her eyebrows. He was late. Again. Traffic was backed up across the intersection and his phone buzzed with yet another impatient text from a customer. He ignored it. Between working 3 part-time jobs, fighting a custody case, and caring for Hazel on his own since Holly died, texts could wait. Life couldn't. He muttered an apology under his breath and picked up his pace eyes fixed on the address ahead, 842 W 4th Street, apartment 302. No elevator, of course. Then he heard it a loud thud. Not a crash, not metal on metal. More like the sickening sound of a body hitting pavement. He spun around. A man, gray-haired, maybe 70, lay crumpled on the crosswalk. His groceries scattered like confetti. Cars honked, but no one moved. Logan didn't hesitate. He turned to the woman standing nearby. She was tall, maybe mid-30s, wrapped in a gray wool coat that screamed money. Dark eyes. Striking. But what mattered was that she wasn't on her phone or looking away. He stepped toward her, urgent. "Can you hold her?" The woman blinked. "My daughter," he said already, transferring Hazel into her arms. "Please, just don't move." Without waiting for an answer, Logan sprinted into the intersection. The man was breathing, but barely. His face was scraped, lips cracked. Logan knelt, shielding him with his body as cars slowed and phones came out. He barked instructions. "Someone, call 911. Don't just stand there." The woman, he barely registered her now, had backed up with Hazel, holding the child close. Hazel stirred, blinked, and finding herself in strange arms, began to cry. Elena Halberg tightened her hold gently and rocked side to side. She whispered something no one could hear, but Hazel soon calmed. By the time the ambulance arrived, Logan was kneeling beside the old man, coat wrapped around him. His own fingers were turning red from the cold. A paramedic took over. "You the one who called this in?" No, Logan said, just saw it happen. "You're freezing," the man said. "You should get checked out too." "I've got a delivery," Logan muttered, half smiling, rising to his feet. He turned, searching. The woman was still there. Hazel was back in her arm's thumb, now planted securely in her mouth, sleepy again. Logan exhaled, stepping toward them. "Thanks, I didn't mean to just—" "You did the right thing," the woman said, voice low and warm. He reached for Hazel. The toddler looked between them as if sensing something unspoken. Then, without a fuss, she reached for her father. Logan tucked her into the crook of his arm. "We should get going." The woman nodded. "Be safe." He hesitated, then offered a small smile. "You too?" She didn't smile back, but she watched him walk away. 5 minutes later, Logan climbed the last of the 3 flights of stairs, panting, Hazel still in his arms, pizza bag slung like a shield on his back. He knocked. The door opened. A young guy in sweatpants looked annoyed. "You're late," traffic, Logan said. He handed over the box and forced a smile. The guy muttered something, tipped $2 and shut the door. Logan stared at the closed door for a beat. Then he turned, trudging back down heart-hammering for more than exertion. Back in his old sedan, he settled Hazel into her car seat. She was half awake, humming something tuneless. He reached to brush her curls from her face and froze. There, pinned to her sleeve, was a business card. Heavy cardstock. No name. Just a gold-embossed logo, Halberg and Associates. He turned it over. nothing on the back. Weird. Logan pulled into traffic, his eyes darting to the card again and again. He couldn't shake the image of the woman, her calm, steady hands, the way Hazel melted into her. And her eyes. Not just beautiful, haunted. He tried to push it aside. He had more pressing problems, past due bills, a court date in 2 weeks, and no backup plan if he lost custody. He needed to pick up another shift, buy cold medicine, fix the heat in the apartment. But as he drove through the darkening streets, his daughter murmured from the back seat, still half asleep, "Daddy." Pretty lady, smelled like Mama. The car swerved slightly before he corrected. Logan gripped the wheel tighter and kept driving, trying not to let the ache behind his ribs grow any deeper. He didn't have time for memories, or mysteries, or the kind of women who wore $1,000 coats and left behind ghostly business cards. But somewhere deep in the back of his mind, something shifted. And the woman in gray didn't leave. Logan stood at the sink, sleeves rolled up past his elbows, washing the last of the dinner plates beneath a stream of lukewarm water. The faucet made a wheezing sound when he turned it off, as if even the plumbing was tired of holding on. Hazel sat on the floor behind him in a mountain of worn stuffed animals and thrift store books, humming softly as she flipped through a board book with missing pages. The apartment was small, just one bedroom they shared, a galley kitchen, a living room that doubled as their play area, and often Logan's bed. Outside, wind pressed against the windows like a warning. He dried his hands and walked over to her. Bath or story first? Hazel didn't look up. Story. He smiled, pulling her into his lap. You always say that. She tilted her head back, the blue light from the TV reflecting in her wide eyes. It's my favorite. Logan reached for a book, Goodnight Moon, frayed and water-stained, and began to read, his voice low, steady, warm. Hazel leaned against his chest and by the 3rd page had fallen asleep. He carried her to the bedroom, laid her on the mattress, and tucked a blanket around her. He lingered, brushing a curl away from her cheek. You're all I've got, baby girl, he whispered, and I'm going to fight like hell to keep it that way. At 10:00 p.m., Logan opened the email that had been sitting in his inbox all day, the one from Lynette Hawkins, the attorney representing his late wife's sister, Tamara. He'd been dreading it. Subject, custody hearing update. McRae vs. Hamilton, Mr. McRae. Please be advised the Hamiltons have filed an urgent motion questioning your financial stability and residential suitability for raising a minor. A social worker will conduct an unannounced home inspection within the next 10 days. Logan leaned back in the creaky kitchen chair, rubbed his temples, and exhaled through clenched teeth. He had no family left. Holly's parents were long gone, and Tamara, who hadn't spoken to them in years, was now claiming Logan was endangering Hazel's future by keeping her in poverty. The irony, she lived 3 states away and had never even met Hazel. But in the eyes of the court, Logan's 3 part-time jobs didn't scream stability. His apartment didn't meet full child welfare standards. He didn't have a savings account. What he did have was love, limitless, ferocious, and unwavering, but love alone didn't sway judges. He pulled out the folder he kept in a kitchen drawer, paperwork for Hazel's birth certificate, pediatric records, proof of employment, old tax returns. He'd been trying to save enough for a real attorney, but every extra dollar went to medicine rent or Hazel's boots last month. There was a knock at the door. He tensed, glanced at the clock, too late for visitors. Opening it cautiously, he found Mrs. Conway, the elderly widow from 3B, standing with her hands wrapped around a casserole dish. I made extra chicken pot pie, she said. You've been looking skinnier than your paycheck lately. Logan gave a tired chuckle and stepped aside. You didn't have to do that. I know. That's why I did. She set the dish down and surveyed the room, eyes softening at the sight of Hazel's toys, the taped-up windows, and the pile of laundry near the radiator. You need anything, you just ask, she said. I'm managing. I didn't say you weren't, but sometimes even strong folks need a minute to breathe. Logan offered a nod. He couldn't afford pride anymore, but he hadn't figured out how to let go of it either. Before she left, Mrs. Conway turned to him. "You're a good father, Logan. I see it. Others will too." After she was gone, he sat at the table staring at the paperwork again. He felt like he was drowning chest-tight with pressure. No matter how hard he swam, the tide always pulled harder. He stood up abruptly and paced. This wasn't sustainable. He couldn't lose Hazel. He needed a stable job, something with benefits, something permanent. Maybe that meant moving. Maybe that meant swallowing his pride and accepting help. His gaze drifted to the gold business card lying on the counter. Halberg and Associates. No phone number, no title, no address. Just a name. And a mystery. He didn't know why he hadn't thrown it away. Maybe because the woman who'd held his daughter that day had looked at Hazel like she mattered. Not like a stranger's child. Like a child, period. Hazel stirred and cried out softly from the bedroom. Logan moved to comfort her kneeling by the mattress. Her small hand gripped his finger in her sleep. "I'm not giving up," he murmured. "I don't care if I have to crawl through fire, I'll find a way." By morning, the world was coated in a thin sheet of ice. Logan bundled Hazel up and strapped her into the car seat in his old rust-bitten sedan. The engine groaned but started. They made it halfway down the block before the heater coughed and died. At the first stoplight, Hazel looked at him through the rearview mirror and said, "Daddy?" "Yeah, sweetheart. Will we always be together?" His chest tightened. He reached back blindly and squeezed her little booted foot. Always kiddo, no matter what. But even as he said it, a part of him whispered that always could mean anything. Always could end at a courtroom door. Always was fragile when held up against a world that didn't care how much you loved your child, only whether you could afford to prove it. And Logan. He was running out of proof. Fast. The bell above the gas station convenience store gave a half-hearted ding as Logan stepped inside, shaking the cold from his coat. Hazel, wrapped like a burrito in her oversized pink parka, rode on his hip with sleepy eyes and cheeks flushed from windburn. He gave a polite nod to the teen at the register, then made his way toward the back cooler, grabbing a gallon of milk and a small carton of eggs. He hesitated, debating over a bundle of overpriced bananas. Hazel tugged his collar. "Can we get peanut butter?" Daddy Logan crouched to her level, brushing her hair aside. "We've got just enough for these." "Next time? Okay." She nodded, disappointed but used to it. That was the part that hurt. They made their way to the register. He counted quarters and ones from a jar in his coat pocket as backup gas money while the teenager watched with the practiced boredom of someone used to seeing struggle walk through the door. $6.52, the kid mumbled. Logan slid the coins across the counter, gave a tired thank you, and turned, and froze. She was standing near the entrance. The woman from that day. Gray coat. Same calm, poised expression. Like someone who belonged in a glass office with skyline views, not a gas station off Interstate 71. Elena. She was browsing the magazine rack, a bottle of water in one hand, a manila envelope in the other. For a moment, she didn't see him. Then she looked up and her expression didn't shift. Not surprise, not recognition, only quiet observation. Hazel squealed. Pretty Lady Logan flushed. Hazel? But Elena smiled now just slightly and stepped toward them. Hi again. Logan adjusted Hazel in his arms. Didn't expect to see you here. I was just passing through, she said simply. Needed gas, and a moment to breathe. He nodded. The silence that fell between them wasn't awkward, exactly, just unexpected. He started to move toward the exit, but she held up a hand. I saw the footage, she said quietly. Of you, saving that man. Logan stopped cold. What footage? Her gaze was unreadable. Someone filmed it. It was circulating in a few forums, human interest circles. You had no idea. I don't follow much online, he muttered. She hesitated. You're a good man, Mr. McRae. His shoulders stiffened. You don't know me. I know what I saw. Yeah, he said a little sharper than intended. You saw 30 seconds. You didn't see the rest, the bills, the nights without heat, the part where the court thinks I'm too poor to raise my own daughter. Elena didn't flinch. No, I didn't, but I'd like to. Logan blinked. Why? She stepped forward and crouched slightly to Hazel's level. Because when someone trusts you with what matters most to them, even for a moment, it's not something you forget. Hazel smiled and reached out to her. Logan exhaled tension leaking from his frame. Do you want to sit? There's a bench outside. I've got 10 minutes before I have to be back on the road. Outside, the wind was crisp but calmer. They sat on the bench near the air pump station, Logan holding Hazel close. Elena sitting with hands folded over the manila envelope. You didn't answer my question, Logan said after a while. Which one? Why you're here. Really? She turned to him. I'm part of a foundation. We invest in small projects, local resilience programs, community outreach. I travel a lot to meet the people we might help. He narrowed his eyes. So, I'm a charity case now. No, she said gently. You're a person I noticed, because you did something no one else did. You acted when others froze, and you trusted a stranger with the most important thing in your world. Her words struck him like a drumbeat, echoing louder than he wanted to admit. What do you want from me? He asked finally. Nothing, she said. I'm just following up. With what she opened the envelope. Inside was a simple folder labeled Community Trades Initiative Pilot Candidates. She handed him a brochure. We're launching a new training program, hands-on mechanical and technical instruction. Paid apprenticeship childcare coverage included. It's part of a national project we're piloting here in Ohio. Logan stared at the page. I'm not a student, he said. You're not just a delivery guy either, she replied. You used to be an engineer, didn't you? He looked at her sharply. How do you know that? She hesitated. I looked you up. After the video. His jaw tightened. So, you've been researching me. I've been curious, she said carefully. Not judging, just trying to understand. He looked back down at the paper. The idea of a future that didn't involve scraping quarters for bananas felt surreal. But real people didn't just hand out lifelines like this, not without expecting something. I don't have a resume, he said. You don't need one. You've got grit, integrity. The rest we can build. He looked at Hazel, her eyelids drooping against his chest. He looked at the street, the sun starting to break through the clouds. And then back at Elena. There was still something about her that didn't add up. She was too composed, too carefully distant. But in her eyes was a kind of sorrow he understood. He took the folder slowly, like it might vanish if he moved too quickly. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I'm asking. They stood. Elena offered Hazel a gentle wave. Hazel smiled. Will we see the pretty lady again? Elena crouched her voice barely above a whisper. I hope so. Logan watched her walk away, stepping into a sleek black SUV parked near the curb. No driver, no entourage. Just her, a woman in gray vanishing as quickly as she'd come. As he buckled Hazel into the back seat, Logan glanced at the folder again. He didn't trust Easy anymore, but something about that moment felt different. Not like a handout, more like a door, one he hadn't realized was even there. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready to knock, was ready to. The courtroom smelled faintly of lemon polish and cold bureaucracy. Logan sat rigid in his folding chair, dressed in his one clean button-up shirt and a blazer borrowed from Mrs. Conway's late husband. The sleeves were too long. The collar itched, but at least it looked like effort, respectability. Across the aisle sat Tamara Hamilton, his late wife's sister, her posture straight as a ruler, arms folded neatly across a designer coat lips, pinched in polite disdain. Her husband, Derek, leaned toward her to whisper something, and she nodded without ever looking at Logan. Hazel wasn't there, thank God. Logan had left her with Mrs. Conway for the morning, promising he'd be back before lunch. He didn't want Hazel to see this. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Marilyn Faulkner, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with clipped silver hair and sharp eyes, entered briskly and sat. The custody hearing began. Tamara's attorney stood first. She painted Logan's life with broad, harsh strokes. Multiple part-time jobs with no benefits. Substandard housing. A lack of stable support system. A recent incident where the child was seen unattended in a public intersection. Logan's chest clenched. The video. She submitted the footage to the court, a phone-recorded clip grainy and shaky showing Logan rushing toward a collapsed man while Hazel remained off-frame. From this angle, it looked damning. Logan's court-appointed attorney tried to object but was overruled. Then Tamara took the stand. She delivered her testimony with mechanical precision. She didn't hate Logan, she said. She simply believed Hazel deserved more stability, more structure, more safety. Her home in Virginia had a fenced yard, a private preschool nearby, and a nanny. She referred to Hazel as the child, never by name. When it was his turn, Logan stood slowly. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was clear. "I may not have a backyard," he said, "or a trust fund, or polished floors, but I have something Tamara doesn't, every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every nightmare she wakes up from. I'm there. I know what makes her laugh. I know the way she hums when she colors. I know my daughter." He looked toward the judge. "And yes, I work 3 jobs. Yes, we live small. But I've never let her go to bed hungry. I've never missed a day holding her when she needed me. Isn't that what being a parent is?" Judge Faulkner gave no indication she'd been moved. Her face was a practiced mask. "We'll take a short recess," she said. Logan stepped into the hallway, lungs tight, throat dry. He sat on the wooden bench and buried his face in his hands. He was losing. He could feel it. Every moment of sacrifice, every sleepless night, every dollar stretched beyond reason, it might not be enough. Not here. Not in this world of paperwork and technicalities. He heard footsteps. Looking up, he saw a young woman from the court clerk's office walking toward the judge's chambers with a thick envelope in her hands. Behind her, another woman trailed tall, dark coat striking presence. Elena. Logan stood abruptly. She met his eyes but gave no reaction, only a small nod, calm, reserved, like nothing in the world could shake her. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Then the courtroom was called back to order. Judge Faulkner adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat. "Before this court rules, we've reviewed additional evidence submitted during recess. Namely, security footage retrieved from a traffic camera located on the intersection of 4th and Broad." Logan's heart stuttered. The judge continued. "The video clearly shows the respondent, Mr. McRae, placing the child into the care of a bystander before approaching the injured party. The bystander is identified as an adult female who remains present and protective of the child during the entire incident. At no point is the child left unattended." Tamara's attorney tried to protest. "Your Honor, we were not made aware of this footage. Neither was this court, Judge Faulkner snapped. But the evidence is clear, and damning to the petitioner's claim." She folded her hands. "This court finds no credible threat to the child's well-being in her current home environment. While financial hardship is noted, there is no evidence of neglect, abuse, or irresponsibility." A pause. "Custody will remain with the child's father, Mr. Logan McRae." Logan's knees buckled slightly. Tamara let out a sharp breath and rose from her chair, lips pursed, her husband already pulling her toward the exit. Logan sat down slowly. He didn't even realize his hands were shaking until the court officer placed the released custody documents in them. He blinked at the seal. It was real. Hazel was staying with him. He walked out into the parking lot like a man surfacing from deep water, heart hammering with disbelief. The cold hit him hard, but he didn't care. Elena stood by the curb. She didn't wave, didn't smile, but she waited. He approached her slowly. "It was you." She met his gaze. It wasn't difficult. The footage was there. No one had thought to look. You did. I had to, she said simply. The court needed the truth. So did you. He nodded, struggling to find words. I don't know what to say. You don't owe me anything, Logan. He paused. Why are you doing this? Elena hesitated. Because once someone saw me falling and did nothing. And I've regretted not having someone like you in my life ever since. Their eyes met two people standing in a December wind, each scarred in different ways, each holding on to something just out of reach. He didn't thank her. Not yet. The moment was too big for small words. But as she walked away again, fading into the background like a half-forgotten song, Logan understood something for the first time in a long while. He wasn't alone anymore, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't either. It was past 9 when Logan finally got Hazel to sleep. Her body curled into his chest like a comma, warm and limp with trust, her breath rising and falling in small rhythmic puffs. He lay there longer than he needed to, memorizing her heartbeat, the faint smell of baby shampoo, the weight of her hand resting against his shirt. She was safe. She was his. And for the first time in months, maybe years, that truth wasn't teetering on a knife's edge. When he finally rose from the mattress and tucked her in, Logan walked back to the front door to double-check the deadbolt. That's when he noticed it. A package. Small, wrapped in brown paper, resting neatly against the doorframe. There was no label, no address, no note, only his name handwritten in clean cursive. He brought it inside cautiously and unwrapped it on the kitchen table under the dull yellow glow of the overhead light. Inside was a carefully folded child's winter coat, dark navy, warm, and lined with fleece. Brand new. It looked like it cost more than he'd made that entire day. And beneath it, nestled in the box, was a small wooden item wrapped in tissue paper. Logan peeled back the layers and uncovered a rectangular wooden music box worn around the edges but beautifully carved. He opened it. A soft melody spilled out, haunting and familiar. Inside the lid was a message burned into the wood in tiny, delicate script. To the child who deserves every story to end with a happy one. He stared at it for a long time. It was her. Elena. He didn't know how she'd gotten his address, but something in him wasn't surprised. She moved through the world like someone who could slip through walls if she needed to quiet, unseen precise. But this wasn't charity. It was something more intimate. A gesture without expectation. A whisper instead of a declaration. And that scared him more than he wanted to admit. The next morning, Hazel squealed with delight at the coat. "It has pockets!" she exclaimed, jamming both hands inside and dancing in a small circle. "Can I wear it now? It's yours," Logan said. "Go ahead." He wanted to ask her what she thought about the music box, but Hazel had already set it beside her coloring books like it belonged there. Later that day, as Logan cleaned out the kitchen drawer where he kept old paperwork and coupons, he came across something he hadn't seen in months, the last letter Holly had written him. It had come in the mail 2 weeks after she passed something she'd dropped at the hospital's outgoing box when she was recovering from the emergency C-section that nearly killed her. He hadn't had the heart to read it again. Until now. He opened the envelope with careful fingers. "Logan, if you're reading this, it means things didn't go as planned. I know you're scared. I know you're tired. And I need you to know you don't have to do this alone forever. Let someone help you when the time comes. You'll know it when you see it. Trust your gut. And please, love again. Let Hazel see what a good man looks like when he's allowed to heal. Love you always, Holly." The words cut through him like sunlight through a cracked door. He sat in silence for a long time, the letter pressed to his chest, the music box playing softly in the next room. 2 days later, Logan stood outside the community center, the folder from Elena's foundation tucked under one arm. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. Part of him was still unsure. Another part, a deeper, braver part, knew that change didn't come wrapped in certainty. It came as a challenge. A dare. Inside the center was warm and filled with people. Men and women of all ages, shapes, and colors. Everyone looked nervous. Everyone looked like they had something to prove. Logan added his name to the sign-in sheet. Mr. McRae. He turned. The woman addressing him wasn't Elena, but someone who clearly worked for her early 30s clipboard and hand-friendly smile. Hi, I'm Kendra. I manage onboarding for the Community Trades Initiative. Elena said you might come by. Logan blinked. She mentioned me. She said, look for the guy who doesn't know he's already a leader. Kendra grinned. She also said to give you this. From her folder, Kendra pulled out a handwritten note. Logan opened it slowly. Logan, showing up is the hardest part. You've already done that. Welcome to the next step. He exhaled. For the first time in so long, he felt something shift in his chest, not just relief, but momentum. Let's get you settled, Kendra said. As she led him through the center past classrooms filled with tools, workbenches, and quietly focused people, Logan realized something. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was stepping into something. A possibility. A beginning. That night, as he tucked Hazel in, she whispered sleepily, Daddy. Yeah, I like the pretty lady. He chuckled. Yeah, me too. She blinked up at him. Will she come back? I don't know, he said honestly, but I hope so. Hazel turned toward the music box and pressed play. The melody drifted into the dark room. And for the first time in years, Logan didn't dread tomorrow. He was beginning to believe. Maybe their story hadn't reached its end. Maybe it had just turned a page. The boiler hissed again. Logan stood over the open panel in his apartment hallway, a wrench in one hand and a flashlight between his teeth. The heat had been acting up for days, coming in short, uneven bursts that left the living room freezing by dawn and the bathroom practically tropical. Hazel sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, coloring a picture of a horse that looked suspiciously like a lumpy dog. She didn't seem to mind the cold. I think he needs shoes, she said, holding up her drawing. Logan glanced over, shivering as the warm patch on his back gave way to another blast of icy air. Sweetheart, I think he needs a whole new skeleton. Hazel giggled. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. 2 sharp raps, then silence. Logan lowered the flashlight and exchanged a look with Hazel, then wiped his hands on a towel and opened the door. Elena stood there, gloved hands clutching a thermos. Her cheeks were pink from the wind, and her hair was loose, curling slightly around her collar. I brought coffee, she said, holding out the thermos like a peace offering. And a space heater if you need it. My car's full of them. Logan blinked. Are you serious? I am. She smiled a little sheepishly. We're donating extras to families through the foundation, and I thought maybe yours could use a head start. Behind him, Hazel gasped. Pretty lady Elena looked past him and gave a small wave. Hi, Hazel. I missed you. Hazel beamed, which Logan noted she rarely did with anyone except him. He hesitated only a second. You want to come in? Inside, Elena crouched next to Hazel and accepted a hand-drawn picture of a lopsided rainbow as if it were fine art. Then she moved to sit across from Logan at the tiny kitchen table, her eyes scanning the cluttered space without judgment. He poured the coffee. It smelled rich, real nothing like the instant powder he'd been drinking. They sat in silence for a moment. The music box in the living room played softly, Hazel's new obsession. It had become a part of their bedtime routine, her comfort object, her lullaby. Logan nodded toward it. Was that yours? Elena's fingers tightened slightly around her mug. Yes, my father gave it to me when I was little. It's one of the only things I kept after he died. Logan studied her. You don't talk about your family much. That's because there's not much to say, she replied quietly. Not much worth saying anyway. He waited. She glanced at Hazel, who was now humming and spinning slowly in circles. I was 17 when I found out I was pregnant, Elena said, her voice barely audible. My mother was furious, said I'd ruined everything. We were a legacy family, she said. We didn't make headlines for the wrong reasons. My father, he wasn't much better, but quieter about it. Logan didn't move. They sent me away, to a place out west, told me to have the child, then give it up and never speak of it again. She looked down. And I did. Silence wrapped around them like a storm cloud. I didn't even hold her, Elena said, eyes wet. I signed the paper, I walked out, and I never looked back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was too scared that if I saw her, I'd never be able to let go. Logan's chest ached. What happened after I buried it, she said. Graduated, built a company, created a life where no one could ever control me again. But the hole stayed. Quiet. Deep. She exhaled slowly. Then one day I saw a man hand over his daughter to a stranger in the middle of chaos, and I couldn't stop thinking about you, or her, or the moment I gave mine away. Logan leaned back in his chair staring at her. That's why you helped me. No, she said firmly. I helped you because you deserved it. But I stayed. Because I wasn't ready to leave. Not again. Hazel ran over at that moment, her rainbow picture now folded into a paper hat. She placed it carefully on Elena's head. You're the queen, Hazel declared. Elena laughed through a throat full of tears. That's a first. Logan watched them, something stirring in him he hadn't allowed in years, something warm and dangerous and impossibly human. Do you regret it? He asked, voice low. Giving her up every single day, she said. But that pain, it taught me what matters, and I'm trying in my own flawed way to honor that now. Hazel returned to her coloring, leaving Elena and Logan in a space filled with old grief and something startlingly close to hope. You're not the only one who buried something, Logan said after a while. Elena looked up. When Holly, my wife, passed away, I shut down. I told myself Hazel would be enough. That love like that only happens once, and I was lucky to even get it once. She said nothing, waiting. But lately, he continued, eyes meeting hers. I've started wondering if maybe the heart isn't a one-shot organ. Maybe it's expandable. Elena's breath caught, and in that tiny drafty apartment with its leaky boiler and mismatched chairs, something real passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but honest, undeniably alive. As the sun began to set, Elena stood to leave. I've taken too much of your time, she said, reaching for her coat. Not at all. Logan replied, his voice softer now. At the door, she hesitated. You know, you're doing better than you think. He raised an eyebrow. Is that a professional opinion? She smiled. No, just a woman who sees what's real. He opened the door for her. The wind had died down. Snow flurried softly in the fading light. As she stepped outside, Hazel's voice rang out behind them. Bye, Mommy. Both adults froze. Elena turned back, her face unreadable. Logan looked at her, really looked, and saw a flicker of something so raw it made his throat tighten. She didn't mean he started. But Elena shook her head, eyes bright. No, she whispered. It's okay. Then she walked into the twilight coat fluttering behind her like the final page of a story that just maybe wasn't over yet. The storm rolled in faster than the forecast had warned. By dusk, a sharp sleet began to fall over Cincinnati, coating sidewalks in glistening frost and making the roads slick and unforgiving. Logan tightened Hazel's coat hood around her small face, securing the scarf with trembling hands. She clung to her stuffed rabbit like it held back the wind itself. He lifted her into his arms and dashed across the slushy parking lot of the walk-in clinic feet, slipping on black ice as he approached the sliding glass doors. Inside, the heat blasted his face and fogged his glasses. The receptionist looked up with practiced disinterest, then sat up straighter as she took in Hazel's flushed cheeks and Logan's anxious expression. She's burning up, he said, voice hoarse. Fever started this afternoon, then she wouldn't keep water down. She's not herself. The receptionist glanced at the screen. Do you have insurance? Logan hesitated. Just Medicaid for her. She nodded and handed him a clipboard. "Fill this out. It's a 2-hour wait." Logan stared at the form. Hazel whimpered in his arms. Her forehead radiated heat and her lips were dry. "She can't wait 2 hours." "I'm sorry," the woman said not unkindly. "Triage nurse will evaluate her soon. We're at capacity." He sat on a worn plastic chair in the corner, bouncing Hazel, gently whispering words he didn't believe. The room buzzed with fluorescent light and quiet desperation. He counted the minutes. Watched Hazel's eyes flutter. Felt the weight of panic press into his chest. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. He checked his phone. No messages, no backup plan. He'd called every favor he had left last month. The gas tank was low. His checking account had just enough to cover cold medicine maybe, but not a private pediatrician. Hazel's head lolled to the side. Her breathing was shallow. "Please," he whispered to no one in particular. "Please don't let this be the moment I lose her." Then Logan. He looked up. Elena. She was stepping through the glass doors, hair damp from the sleet coat wrapped tightly around her frame, eyes wide with alarm. "I got your voicemail," she said, crossing to him quickly. "What happened? I didn't leave you. He stopped, checked his phone, and realized the last call he made accidentally was to her number. A misdial. Or maybe not. He swallowed hard. She's sick. I can't get anyone to see her." Elena looked down at Hazel, her face shifting into focus with a steadiness that startled him. "Come with me." "Elena, I can't afford, I didn't ask." 20 minutes later, they were in the back room of a small private clinic on the edge of downtown. Elena had driven like a woman-possessed, tires slicing through slush with surgical precision. Inside, the nurse barely took Logan's name before ushering them back. A pediatrician appeared within 5 minutes. Hazel was laid on the table, whimpering quietly. The doctor, a calm, middle-aged man with kind eyes, ran through a battery of checks. "Her fever's high," he said, "but the good news is it's viral. We'll get fluids in her. Let's cool her down and monitor for a couple of hours. She's a tough one." Logan sank into the chair beside the exam table, relief washing over him like warm rain. Elena stood near the door arms, folded, her coat still clinging with melting snow. "You didn't have to do this," he said quietly. "I know. But you did. I wasn't going to let you sit there and watch her get worse," she said. "Not when I could help." He met her eyes. "This is more than help," she exhaled. "Maybe I needed to be needed." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. "For what? For pushing you away when all you've done is care." Elena tilted her head slightly. "I'm not here for thanks. I'm here because I know what it feels like to be helpless, and I've learned that if you have the power to ease someone else's fear, you use it, no matter the cost." Logan blinked. "You talk like someone who's had to learn that the hard way." "I have." Another silence passed, this one less heavy, more mutual. The doctor returned with a blanket and a smile. "She's already improving. Should be stable enough to head home in an hour." Logan breathed in deeply, then nodded. Later that night, Logan carried Hazel, now dozing peacefully, into his apartment. Elena followed, holding the small bag of prescriptions and a container of soup. He laid Hazel on the bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. When he came back into the kitchen, Elena was at the stove warming the soup without asking. "You didn't have to stay," he said. "I know," she said again. "But I wanted to." They sat at the table, 2 mismatched mugs of tea between them, the silence familiar, now comforting. "Today scared me," he admitted. "I've faced a lot since Holly died, but I haven't felt that helpless since the night she passed." Elena reached across the table and laid her hand over his. "You're not alone anymore, Logan." He stared at her fingers on his slim, warm, steady. "You say that like it's a promise." "It is," she said. And something inside him softened. He didn't say the words, not yet. But in his heart he began to believe them. That night, as the wind howled against the windows and the radiator clicked its uneven tune, Logan sat in the armchair beside Hazel's bed, watching her chest rise and fall. The music box played its gentle lullaby once more. And across the room, Elena sat silently, her presence not loud or overwhelming, but constant. Anchoring. The storm outside raged on, but inside that little apartment something had shifted. Not just safety, not just healing, but the quiet, tentative beginning of something neither of them had dared to hope for. A future. Sunlight spilled across the wooden floor of Logan's apartment, fractured through cheap blinds but still warm. Hazel, now fully recovered, was perched on the living room rug, building a tower out of mismatched plastic blocks, her face set in fierce concentration. Logan stood at the counter pouring coffee into 2 mugs. He added a splash of oat milk to one and left the other black. He'd learned how Elena took her coffee not because she told him, but because she always left the oat milk untouched when he offered. She was sitting by the window, elbows resting on the sill, gazing out at the thawing city below. The February chill was lifting, though it still whispered through the cracks. Outside, patches of snow clung stubbornly to the curbs like memories that refused to melt. Logan handed her the mug and sat opposite. "You didn't have to stay overnight," he said. "I know," she replied softly, her eyes still watching something distant. "But I didn't want to leave." Hazel piped up from the floor. "Daddy, look, it's a castle." He smiled. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Elena turned and offered a proud nod. "Very royal." Hazel beamed, then resumed her architectural conquest. The silence that followed was gentle, but not empty. It was the silence of familiarity, not yet intimacy, but something heading there. Something real. Elena took a slow sip, then placed the mug down. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." Logan straightened slightly. "Okay." She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder different from the last. This one was labeled with his name in small printed type. "I want to offer you something," she said, "but I need you to hear me out before you say no." He raised an eyebrow but nodded. "We've just launched a transitional program for candidates in our trades initiative. It's more than training. It includes salaried placement health benefits, child care coverage, and eventual ownership track for independent contracting." Logan's mouth went dry. "That sounds like it's for someone more qualified." Elena opened the folder. Inside was a packet with typed evaluations, handwritten notes, and a photograph of him from a training session 2 weeks ago. Sleeves, rolled up hands demonstrating how to realign a water heater component. He didn't know someone had been watching. "I sat in on your workshop," she said. "You don't just fix things. You teach people how to believe they can fix them too. That's leadership. And we need people like you." He stared at the photo. It didn't feel like him. It looked like someone together, capable, like someone who hadn't been on the edge of losing everything 3 weeks earlier. "I don't want a handout," he said quietly. "This isn't a handout, Logan. It's an investment. And not just from me, from people who believe in what you've shown. I'm just the one who had the privilege of noticing first." He shook his head, swallowing hard. "I'm not used to people believing in me. Maybe it's time you get used to it." Hazel's voice chimed in again, pulling him from the edge of his thoughts. "Daddy, I made a garden on the roof." He looked at her tower. Somehow she'd constructed a layer of green Legos across the top. He chuckled softly. "Of course you did." Elena watched the exchange with a quiet warmth in her eyes. Then she leaned forward, voice lower, now more personal. "I know what it's like to be offered something you think you don't deserve," she said. "I know what it's like to believe that if you accept help, it means you're weak. But the truth is, sometimes accepting help is the bravest thing we do." He looked at her then, not just her words, but her. The layers beneath her calm, her poise, her strength. She wasn't just giving him a job. She was handing him trust. A kind of faith he hadn't felt from anyone since Holly died. He reached for the folder again. Is there a deadline? End of the month, she said. But spots are filling fast, and you'd be doing more than just work. You'd be shaping the next wave of apprentices. You'd have a voice, a future. He sat back in his chair, trying to breathe around the knot in his throat. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about rebuilding something he didn't even know had collapsed his sense of worth. I'll think about it, he said finally. I know, she replied. And whatever you decide, it's yours to choose. No pressure. They sat for a while longer, sipping coffee and watching Hazel build an empire of colored blocks and innocence. That afternoon, Elena gathered her coat and bag. Hazel wrapped herself around her legs. Will you come back tomorrow? Elena smiled, crouching down. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Hazel pouted. Can you stay forever? Elena's eyes flicked up to Logan. For a second, her gaze faltered. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft. Wouldn't that be something? Hazel returned to her blocks. Logan walked Elena to the door. He hesitated. I meant what I said. I'll think about it. I know, she said again. Then she looked at him with something deeper than gratitude. Just know. Sometimes when the storm clears, what's left behind isn't ruin. It's space. For something new. She left, and Logan stood there watching the hallway long after she'd disappeared. He glanced at the folder again, then at Hazel still humming to herself on the floor crown of Legos atop her head. Maybe the storm hadn't broken him. Maybe it had broken open something far more important. And maybe, just maybe, he was finally ready to step into the light. The invitation arrived in an envelope far too elegant for Logan's mailbox. Thick cardstock, cream-colored with embossed gold lettering that shimmered under the apartment's flickering kitchen light. At first glance, he assumed it was a mistake, something meant for the law office down the hall, or one of the newer tenants upstairs who drove luxury cars and didn't make eye contact. But there it was, Mr. Logan McRae printed in bold serif font across the top. Inside, the card read, You are cordially invited to attend the annual Hope and Home Foundation Gala celebrating leaders of quiet impact. March 15th, 7 p.m. The Granville Ballroom, downtown Cincinnati. Formal attire requested. Childcare provided on site. Your presence is more than welcomed. It is earned. There was no signature, just the seal of the foundation. He turned the card over and over in his hand, waiting for it to vanish like a dream. But it stayed real, tactile, unbelievable. Logan stood in front of the mirror 3 nights later in a charcoal gray suit. Mrs. Conway had altered herself, muttering something about broad shoulders and poor stitching. Hazel clapped from the couch. You look like a prince daddy. He smoothed the lapel. A very nervous prince. Hazel wore her best dress, one Elena had brought last week just in case. Pale yellow with tiny embroidered daisies and a matching bow. Logan hadn't asked where she bought it. He didn't want to know how much it cost. He bundled her into the car and made the drive downtown in silence, heart pounding. He wasn't sure why he was going. Curiosity. Obligation. Some vague need to prove to himself, to her, to the universe that he belonged in more than just the margins. Maybe it was all of those things. The Granville Ballroom was carved out of glass and steel, lit from the inside like a lantern. The valet didn't blink twice when Logan handed him the keys to his rust-spotted sedan. Inside, a woman in black sequins greeted them at a check-in table, eyes lighting up when she saw Hazel. You must be Mr. McRae, she said warmly. We've been expecting you. Hazel was led to a room down the hall filled with other children and a rainbow of art supplies. Logan knelt and kissed her forehead. You'll be okay. She nodded. You're just in the other room, right. He straightened, took a breath, and followed the music. The ballroom was stunning. Chandeliers floated like constellations. Tables dressed in white linen surrounded a stage with soft gold lighting. Waiters glided between guests like shadows, and the hum of polite conversation buzzed beneath the music from a live-string quartet. Logan lingered near the back, feeling like a stain on silk. Then he saw her. Elena stood at the center of it all speaking to a small cluster of donors and board members. She wore a deep navy gown that shimmered like the night sky. Her hair was swept up a few tendrils framing her face. She looked composed, radiant, untouchable. He almost turned around, but then her eyes found him, and everything softened. She excused herself and walked straight toward him, heels clicking like punctuation marks. When she reached him, she didn't say hello. She didn't ask how he felt. She simply reached for his hand and squeezed. "You came," she said. "You invited me. I hoped you'd believe you belonged here." "I don't," he said, half smiling. "You do," she said without blinking. "And tonight I'm going to prove it." Later, Elena took the stage. The room fell silent. The lights dimmed slightly, the air shifting. She didn't use a script. Just a single page she folded and tucked into her pocket. "I've spent much of my adult life building things," she began. "Companies, portfolios, partnerships. I've built walls too, ones that kept me moving forward fast and unbothered. But a few months ago, something happened that made one of those walls crack." She paused, her gaze scanning the room. Then it settled on him. "I saw a man, an exhausted, overworked man, hand over his child to a complete stranger so he could save someone else's life. Not knowing he was being watched, not knowing his kindness would ripple." Murmurs rose. Faces turned. Logan sank lower in his seat. That man didn't do it for recognition. He did it because it was right. And in doing so, he reminded me that the strongest people often speak the quietest truths. She took a breath. We talk a lot in philanthropy about impact, about big numbers and bold changes. But sometimes impact is a father who reads bedtime stories by flashlight when the heat gets cut. A man who teaches others how to fix water heaters even when his own kitchen sink leaks. A parent who stays. Elena's voice thickened slightly. "Tonight, I want to honor that kind of strength. The kind that doesn't headline the news but changes lives all the same." Applause swelled. Logan sat, frozen, stunned, throat tight. He didn't see her step off the stage or move toward him until she was beside him again. She extended her hand. "Dance with me?" He hesitated. "You just gave a speech about me. I think that's enough attention for one night." She smiled. "Come on. One dance. I promise not to step on your feet." They moved slowly across the dance floor, a little awkward at first, then more naturally as the music flowed. Logan hadn't danced since his wedding. He barely remembered how. But Elena didn't care. She just held his hand, her other resting on his shoulder, and swayed like the rest of the world had fallen away. "You didn't have to say all that," he murmured. "I wanted to. It was personal. It was true." They looked at each other. Really looked. And for the first time, Logan didn't see Elena the executive, or Elena the savior. He saw the woman beneath the armor, a woman who had lost, a woman who had rebuilt, just like him. Just then, Hazel came bounding into the room from the children's area barefoot and glowing with joy. She spotted them on the dance floor and charged straight toward them. "Daddy." He scooped her up and Elena laughed. Hazel looked between them, then whispered something that made them both go still. "I want her to stay." Logan didn't reply, because in that moment, for the first time since everything fell apart, he believed. So did he. The sun had long since dipped below the Cincinnati skyline, but the glow inside the Granville ballroom remained golden and warm, like a held breath before something sacred. Guests filtered out, slowly trailing laughter and well wishes, but Logan remained seated near the edge of the dance floor, Hazel asleep in his arms, her little head resting against his chest. Her hair still smelled faintly of baby shampoo and crayons. The orchestra had gone quiet. Only the gentle hum of late-night cleanup remained, servers clearing glasses, distant chatter from staff. Elena stood a few paces away, speaking with an older woman in pearls who appeared to be thanking her profusely. When she finished, she turned toward Logan, her steps quiet, measured. She sat beside him, saying nothing at first. Hazel stirred slightly, and Logan gently rocked her back to sleep with the instinct of a father who had done this too many nights to count. "You gave her a night she'll never forget," Elena said softly. "She gave it to me first," he replied. They sat there just breathing for a moment, two people tethered not by accident but by 1,000 silent choices showing up, staying, listening, believing. "I wasn't sure I should come tonight," Logan confessed. "I thought I'd be out of place, that everyone would see what I really am." "And what's that?" she asked, someone just barely holding it all together. Elena turned toward him fully. "You know what I see? I see someone who's already done the hard part. He didn't walk away, even when everything inside him wanted to. He stayed, and Hazel knows that. She trusts that. He didn't speak. He couldn't." Elena's voice dipped lower. "I spent so many years building walls I thought would keep me from ever falling again. And then I met you, and Hazel. And I realized sometimes the fall isn't the end. Sometimes it's where everything begins." She reached into her small evening clutch and pulled something out, a delicate silver locket oval-shaped with a fine etching across the front. She pressed it into Logan's hand without explanation. He opened it. Inside was a photo. Not of her, but of a hospital wristband. It bore the name Baby Girl Halberg, with a birth date from nearly 2 decades earlier. My daughter Elena said barely above a whisper. "I never even got to hold her, just saw her once through the glass before they took her away. I wasn't brave enough to fight back then. I let others decide what was best for me for her." Logan's breath hitched. "Elena." She shook her head gently. "I'm not telling you this to gain sympathy. I'm telling you because for the first time in my life I want something I've never let myself want. Something real." She looked down at Hazel, then back up at him. Her eyes shimmered with something both terrifying and breathtaking. "I know I can't take Holly's place, and I'm not trying to. But I love her, Logan, and I love what I feel when I'm with you. I want to be part of this, of both of you." Logan couldn't breathe. The words were simple, but they shattered something inside him. In a good way, in a necessary way. Elena reached out and gently touched Hazel's hair. "If you'd let me, I'd like to stay. Not just for visits, not just for good days, but for all of it, for bedtime stories and sick days and pancakes that get burned." She swallowed hard. "Can I be her mom?" The question didn't hang awkwardly in the air. It landed, like truth, like hope, like an answer to a prayer Logan never dared speak aloud. He didn't speak. Not right away. Instead, he stood slowly, still holding Hazel in his arms, and turned to face Elena completely. His eyes were wet, raw, but steady. "You already are," he said. Elena's lip trembled, and when she stepped forward, Logan shifted Hazel gently into one arm and wrapped the other around her. They stood there, the three of them, in the soft glow of the ballroom's final flickering lights. No music played, no audience watched. And yet, it felt like the most important moment of their lives. Later that night, back at the apartment, Logan tucked Hazel into bed while Elena stood at the doorway, unsure whether to step in. Hazel, half asleep, reached for her. "Sing the song," she murmured. Elena blinked. "What song, sweet pea? The one from the box," Hazel mumbled. "You always play it." Elena stepped forward, sat at the edge of the bed, and opened the small wooden music box on the nightstand. The familiar tune danced into the quiet. Hazel smiled, then drifted into sleep. Elena closed the box and turned to Logan. "I didn't know she remembered." "She remembers everything," Logan said gently, "especially the people who make her feel safe." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't hesitate. Out on the balcony, the wind had calmed. The city glowed beneath them, steady and unfazed. "You're not running anymore," Logan said quietly. "No," Elena agreed. "I'm done running. He looked at her. Then stay. Stay for pancakes. Stay for finger paints and spilled juice and nights where Hazel insists she's part unicorn. A smile tugged at her lips. That sounds like everything I never knew I needed. He leaned in, not out of obligation or chemistry or timing, but because it was right. Because healing had room for love, too. When their lips met, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. It was true. Not the beginning of a love story, but the middle of one they'd already started without knowing it. And, at last, they were choosing it. Together. Spring arrived in quiet waves. It didn't crash in like some cinematic rebirth. It crept subtly and sweetly into Logan's world, the way the frost retreated from his windowsills, the way Hazel's drawing suddenly burst with more yellows and pinks than blues and grays, the way the apartment didn't feel like a place they were surviving, but somewhere they belonged. And on a Tuesday morning in late March, the sunlight poured across the kitchen table as Hazel sat barefoot, crunching cereal and humming off-key. The same music box the one Elena had given her sat open beside a row of colored pencils. She insisted it play during breakfast now. Elena says we should plant sunflowers on the balcony, Hazel said between bites. I told her they'd grow taller than the railing and block out the whole sky. Logan smiled as he flipped a pancake in the pan. That might be the point. I think she wants to make a jungle. Hazel giggled. A sunflower jungle. She's full of wild ideas, he said. Guess she fits right in. Hazel beamed like he'd just told her the world was made of glitter and soft blankets. Elena moved in 2 weeks after the gala, not with boxes and labels, but with small quiet pieces of herself, an extra toothbrush, fresh towels, books in the living room, a framed photo of her father. She sat beside Hazel's crafts on the shelf. It wasn't the kind of move people wrote songs about. It was better, because it was real. They had their rhythms now. Mornings filled with scrambled eggs, shoe-tying, and dashes for forgotten lunchboxes. Afternoons at the community center where Logan had taken on a full-time mentorship role teaching others how to repair what they once thought too broken to fix. Evenings were slower, softer. Hazel in the bath telling made-up stories. Elena reading poetry out loud while Logan cooked dinner. Sometimes just quiet. A shared glance, a brush of fingers. The ease of not needing to explain why silence could feel like safety. They never called it perfect, but they called it theirs. One Saturday, Logan stood by the workbench in the center's storage room sorting tools when he found the original folder Elena had handed him the first invitation to change, the one he almost walked away from. He flipped it open. His name was still there, typed clean and sharp like it had always been waiting. "You okay?" Elena leaned against the doorway, hair pulled back, smudge of flour on her cheek from baking muffins with Hazel. He held up the folder. "I almost said no, you know." She stepped inside. "I know. You really believed in me before I did." "I just held the mirror," she said gently. "You did the rest." He closed the folder and set it back on the shelf. Funny how life circles around. I thought I was the one saving people. Turns out I was the one being saved. Elena stepped closer, arms wrapping around his waist. We all needed saving, in our own ways. Logan nodded, then pulled her in tighter. "You were never just a chapter, Elena. You were the shift in the whole story." She looked up at him. "So were you." Later that evening, they sat on the fire escape with Hazel between them, bundled in a blanket, watching the first stars appear. Hazel pointed. "That one's mine." "You don't even know its name," Logan teased. "I don't need to," she said seriously. "I named it Hazel anyway." Elena laughed. "That sounds about right." Hazel leaned against her. "Do you think stars miss people?" "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Logan asked. "I mean, maybe the stars were people who got so full of love they popped. So now they just shine forever, trying to reach back." Neither adult spoke for a moment. Then Elena whispered, "I think they do, baby, but I think they also find new people to shine for." Hazel yawned. "Like us? Exactly like us." Inside, they tucked her in. She turned to Elena, eyes drooping. "Are you staying forever?" Elena kissed her forehead. "As long as you'll have me." Hazel nodded, already half asleep. "Good. I think you're already a mom." Logan stood in the doorway, watching them, something blooming in his chest he hadn't known he still had room for. Love. Not the fragile kind that needed grand declarations. The steady kind. The kind that stayed. Before bed, Logan and Elena sat on the couch, hands intertwined. The room was quiet, but not empty. "I never imagined this," he said. "Not after everything." Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. "Me neither. But I think I stopped needing to imagine, because this is better than anything I thought I deserved." She looked up at him. "You always deserved this. So did she. So did we." He kissed her gently. Not the kiss of fire and urgency, the kiss of home. And when the lights were off and the world stilled around them, Logan listened to the sound of Hazel's soft breathing, to the creak of the wind against the glass, to the memory of a moment not so long ago when he handed his daughter to a stranger and changed the course of all three of their lives. That stranger had become everything he never thought he'd find again. And now, in the soft, steady dark, the music box on Hazel's nightstand played its lullaby once more. A reminder that the world breaks, yes, but it also mends. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to reach across the broken places, you don't just heal, you build a home. If this story moved your heart, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Have you ever had a moment where kindness changed everything for you? Don't forget to subscribe if you love stories that touch the soul. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.